Okay, we're going to talk about stocks. All right, stocks when it comes to cooking, not stocks when it comes to making money. All right, so stock is the liquid that forms the foundation for sauces and soups. What you do is you simmer a combination of bones and vegetables and herbs and spices. All right, Mirepoix. The vegetables you're going to put in there is Mirepoix. We've talked about this before. We're going to talk about it again. It's a mix of coarsely chopped vegetables that are used to add flavor, nutrients, and color. The Mirepoix can vary. When I talk about fish stock, I'm going to talk about a white Mirepoix, and it's a little different than a regular one. But a regular one is going to have 50% onions, 25% carrots, 25% celery, and that is standard for like any basic stock you're going to make. All right. The main water in there, or liquid in there, is water. Makes up the biggest portion of the stock, and you should always start off with your stock with cold water. All right, types of stock. All right, so types of stock. You got a white stock, usually made with chicken, beef, or veal or fish. It's bones simmered with vegetables, and it's light in color. You're just going to put the bones in the meat in there. The bones and vegetables in there, and you're going to simmer away. You're not going to brown it. All right. Brown stock. So it's made exactly the same way as a white stock, with the difference of browning the ingredients to go in there. So you take the bones, you cut them into smaller chunks. You put them in your oven. You do not burn them. That's the big thing. Do not burn them. You're trying to brown them. You're trying to get color. You want to get the fond. Whoops. You want to get the fond, which you talked about before. This is the fond, the stuff that's coming out. The bone marrow is here, and you're trying to get all that stuff to come out. You want to get color, you want to get flavor. That's the whole idea, and that's what makes it brown, right? You do the exact same thing with your Mirepoix. You roast it. You do not burn it, and you can see this one. You can see this is add tomato product. You add tomato paste to the Mirepoix while you're roasting it. The tomato product will brown. And it'll also help the vegetables brown. It'll give more flavor. It'll give more color. And that's what we're looking for when we're making a brown stock. Now, the difference between making a brown and white stock, the only difference is the browning of the meats and the browning of the vegetables. Everything else is exactly the same. So if you're making brown stock, you've browned your vegetables, you've browned your meat, you put it in the pot with the Mirepoix. If you're making a white stock, you just take your bones and your Mirepoix and your seasonings and put it in the pot, all right? Put it in the pot, cover it with cold water. Cold water for a couple of different reasons. One, it helps it to be not cloudy. And two, the cold water will penetrate into the bones. You want to get that bone marrow out. If you blanch the bones first, or if you put them in hot water when you're putting them on the stove, when you're filling the pot up, what ends up happening is it kind of seals off the ends, and a lot of that good nutrients and a good flavor is going to stay inside the bones. You want the cold water to penetrate into the bone marrow itself, and then when it heats up, it'll draw it out, all right? Add your seasoning, place it on the stove, bring it to a boil, skim all the impurities off the top, and then turn it down to a simmer and let it cook for the proper amount of time. I'm going to go over that next, the amount of time you have to cook for each different type. And the time differs, and basically it boils down to, no pun intended, the thickness of the bones. Fish bones are very small. It doesn't take very long. Chicken bones are a little bit bigger than fish bones, obviously. And beef bones are much bigger than chicken bones, so it takes longer. All right, then you're going to strain it, chill it, and you're ready to use it, okay? So the different types, different times. So if you're going to do fish, it's also called a fumet. Only need 35 to 40 minutes. Fish bones are awful small. With the Mirepoix in the fish, you're also not going to use carrots. You're going to do celery, onions, and leeks, the white part of the leek. And that is what you'll use for your Mirepoix versus the carrots. Because it's such a tender little tiny thing, you don't want to overpower it with the carrot. All right. Chicken stock, it takes between 3 and 5 hours. And beef stock takes between 6 and 8 hours. Again, depends on what you have. If you're using full chicken legs and full breast and stuff like that and making a broth, you're probably going to go a little bit longer. If you're using a big thick bone for the beef, you're going to go a little bit more towards the 8 hours versus the 6. All right. A glaze is when you simply take the stock and you reduce it down. And reduce it, and it becomes like a paste. That becomes a glaze. All right. Reduction is the process of simmering something until it reduces. When it reduces, a couple of things that happen. One, water is evaporated. When the water evaporates, it power packs the flavor, it condenses the liquid, and it condenses the flavor. It makes it more flavorful. All right. So now we're going to watch the video. This is me making chicken stock, and I'm walking you through the steps. All the steps I just showed you, you're going to actually see right now. Right? So enjoy the video. Bye-bye. All right. So a long time ago, we used to have to buy whole chickens, sides of beef. All right, and what we would have to do is you would have to seam out the side of beef, and you would have to cut the chickens into smaller pieces, use the breasts and the legs for certain things, but you were left over with the bones. So there was no choice but to find a way to utilize the product. You don't want to waste product, right? So you can also see, this is my Mirepoix. Mirepoix is rough cut vegetables, all right? You can see that there are skins in there. A lot of nutrients that we have in our vegetables are in the skin, and we peel it off and throw that away. So with the stock, I'll save my skins, I'll save the outside. You can also see I put some shredded carrots that were from the salad bar that were left over in there. The stems from the celery that you really can't use. You can't put that in a chicken salad, or you can't put that on a vegetable platter, but you can certainly put that into your stock and you'll get the flavor from that. So what you do is you simply take your bones and your Mirepoix and you mix them together in a pot. All right? You're going to cover them with cold water. Now, a lot of people ask me, Chef, why am I using cold water? You use cold water because the bones have the marrow inside the bones. When you heat the pot up, right, if it's hot water, as soon as you put it on there, it seals off those ends and that marrow doesn't come out. If you put cold water in to start the process up, when you heat it up, the cold water will penetrate inside the bone marrow, and as it heats up, you'll pull it out. And that's where you get a lot of your flavors from the bone marrow. Right? Now, while this is happening, I'm going to add, I'm going to add my salt and pepper. I'm going to simply put this on the stove. Now, we're going to go over here. You need to add herbs and spices, right? So I have bay leaves, peppercorns, thyme. I already put salt and pepper in there. Now, this is it's going to be called the sachet de piece. We're going to call it a sachet. Sachet in French means pouch. So you take that, all your herbs, and you put them into cheesecloth. Then you make it into a little pouch. You have a little piece of butcher's twine, and you tie that off. Alright? Once you tie that off, then tie another little knot to it. It has a longer piece attached to it. Alright, so then I take this and I put it into my stock pot. Push it down inside there. Now what I can do is I can bring this to the outside and I can tie this onto the outside of the pot. Cut off the excess stuff. Scissors. Maybe. My scissors will work. Alright. So when this is done cooking, instead of having to strain, I'm going to strain it anyway, but the bay leaf will definitely come out because it's inside that pouch, inside that sachet. So all I have to do is grab onto my string and I pull it out, and then the herbs will be able to go into the mixture, into the stock, through that pouch, through the cheesecloth. But when I pull it out, I won't have to worry about my bay leaf being stuck inside the thing. All right. We're going to bring this to a boil. When it comes to a boil, we'll turn it down to a simmer, and then we're going to take this right here, which is called the skimmer, and there'll be a lot of impurities that will bubble up to the top of the pot, and we'll skim those off. These work for a chef. You say skim the scum with the skimmer, and we'll get rid of all the impurities. We'll simmer this after we bring it to a boil. We want to do that quickly. Bring it to a boil, and then turn it down to a simmer. We'll cook it on the stove for 3 to 5 hours, depending on how long we have. and then we'll strain it out and we'll have chicken stock for our soup or sauces that we're going to use. Okay? All right, our chicken stock has come to a boil, and you can see it simmering away, and you can see all the impurities are coming to the top. So this is where I will get my skimmer and simply go off the top. Right? The skimmer goes underneath, and all the impurities come off, and I just simply dump that out. Okay? It's that simple. Now we've turned it down to a simmer. As you can see, it's bubbling away. I'm going to give it a stir to make sure that these chicken bones go to the bottom, make sure that they have a nice infuse of the food and the flavors. And we're going to simmer for another 3 to 4. Alright, so now here we are. Hour and a half later, it's simmering nicely. And we're just going to keep on cooking it down. In a little while, we're going to strain it. And we'll refrigerate it. We'll use a nice bottle. Okay, so it's been about 5 hours. It's slowly simmered. You can see it's still simmering right here. You can see it's still bubbling up. You can see where it started. It started about here and it's reduced down. So what happens is a lot of that water will evaporate. The more it concentrates, the more power packed the flavor is going to be. And you can grab onto your string and you can pull, and there's my sachet. So I can make sure all my herbs are taken out. So now I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to take it off of the stove. So I'm going to go right over to the sink right over here. And inside the sink, I have another stock pot and what's known as a chinois or a china cap. Okay, put that there. And then I will slowly take my chicken stock and run it through the china cap to make sure that I'm removing all the bones, all the vegetables. And you can see when I pull this off, you can see that there's fat floating on top. And what's going to happen is I'm going to put this into an ice bath and I'm going to cool this quickly. I'm going to get it from the temperature it is now down to 70 degrees within 2 hours. And then I'm going to put it in the cooler and I'm going to, it'll get from that point down to 40 degrees within the next 4 hours, easily enough. All right. So as you can see, I've taken my stock and I put it into a sink, right? Make sure you don't go to the 3-bay pot sink. That's just for vegetable. That's just for pots only. This is a vegetable sink. It's only got 2 bays. That's all it is. I put ice in there. Now I've closed the drain and I'm going to put on the cold water. And I'm going to make sure that the ice and the water level on the outside of this pot is as high, if not higher than the level of the stuff that I'm trying to cool off. Alright? I'm going to take my thermometer now. And I can look at the temperature. So you can see right now the temperature of our liquid is at 160 and going up higher. So it's about 160 right now, okay? That's the temperature of our liquid. We have to get from that 160 down to 70 degrees within 2 hours. Alright? So what I can do now is fill this up. Make sure that the water level, ice water level on the outside of the pot is higher than the level of the stuff on the inside of the pot, which I've definitely surpassed it. So I'll turn that off. All right, so I put my whisk in here. I can stir this around, and periodically I can leave this sitting here, let the ice do its job, let the cold water do its job, and then every once in a while I come and give it a stir. At this point, if I had an ice stick or an ice wand, I could use that. Ice wands are nothing more than a plastic stick that's filled with water. It's a big tube and it's filled with water. Then you freeze it, and then when you're going to cool off a stock, you do your water bath on the outside and you put your ice stick on the inside, and that'll help cool it down. You can see it's already starting to cool off, and the fat is starting to rise to the top. That's what's going to happen. Now tomorrow, I'm going to put this after we cool it off. We're going to put it in the cooler, and tomorrow we'll finish this video and I'll show you what's on top. We'll be able to pull the fat off, and we could use that to make a roux. Okay, so it's been about an hour and a half, and we went from our temperature of 130 something down to 67 degrees. So we've reached our 2 hours. easily enough. And now we have 4 hours to get that from that 67 degrees down to 40. All right, you can see the ice is still doing fine on the outside. If you come back and all your ice is melted, you might want to drain some water and add some more ice to help speed up that cooling process. Okay, about a half hour later, you can see on the very top where the fat has started to separate, and that means it's definitely cooling down. And all that stuff that's floating around on top, the white stuff floating around on top, that's all fat. Alright, so what's our temperature now? Let's just see. Temperature now is at 53. So we have a good 3 hours before we have to get down to 40 degrees, and I think that we're going to have no issue whatsoever. Alright, so I've given another hour or so, and I took my thermometer in there, and it drops to 40. There we go. We're at 40 degrees, and we're well within our time amount. So I'm going to now take this out. You can see that my ice bath is still intact, and the fat is floating on top. I'm going to take this out of the ice bath. I'm going to wrap it in plastic, label and date it, and then tomorrow morning I'll be ready to use it to make a sauce or a soup, whatever I want. Alright, so now it is the next morning. You can see the fat is suspended inside of the pot. I'm going to take my spider. I'm going to grab that fat, take it completely out of there, put that into a pot. Alright, get as much of it off as I possibly can. And so now what I'm going to do is I will take that fat, I will heat that up, add flour to it, make a roux, and then if I want to make a chicken velouté, I'm going to have a chicken flavored roux. Alright, so now we're going to take our chicken stock, and we can take a ladle of the chicken, stir it around a little bit, get a ladle of the chicken stock out. You can see it's got a nice tan color. Alright, put it into a 4-ounce cup, and you can see the tan color, a little bit of herbs and spices floating around in there. And what I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to clarify this and turn it into consommé. Okay. The process of making chicken stock. Back in the day, a long time ago, before there was such thing as boxed beef, or there were things like pre-cut chicken, you would get whole chickens in, you would get sides of beef in, and you had to find something to do with those bones because you would lose the product. In this day and age, it's rare to see a whole side of beef or a whole chicken. Usually it's already cut up for you. So you can get chicken base, you can get beef base, you can get lobster base, you can get vegetable bases, pork bases, pretty much you name it, you can get it. And all it is a chicken stock that has been reduced. And then if you follow the directions on the back of the container, it'll tell you how much to add for each tablespoon. And essentially what you're doing is you're reconstituting the chicken stock that they made for you. A lot of times you don't have time to make chicken stock or beef base or chicken base, so you buy this. It comes in like a paste. If you've ever seen a chicken bouillon cube or a beef bouillon cube, it's the exact same thing except for it's in a paste form. Definitely a time saver. It's good for you to know how to make stocks from scratch. If you have bones, no sense in throwing them away. But in most commercial kitchens and restaurants, you're going to see these products and you'll use these.